Welcome, chosen ones. There comes a point where the fire has burned everything it can, and the only thing left standing is you. Chosen ones, lean in for this one. Did you know that the human body can only feel a certain level of pain before it literally shuts off the receptors to protect itself? That's right. There's a built-in limit even for suffering. And spiritually, the same thing applies. At some point, heaven steps in and says, enough. Lesson complete. Cycle closed. That's where you are right now. You didn't just crawl out of a nightmare. You've walked across its ashes and it cannot pull you back again. Think of it like a bad Netflix series. You suffered through too many episodes. The plot twists were unnecessary. And finally, the show got cancelled. No reruns, no reboots, no sequels, done. But here's the suspense. The end of that torment isn't just relief. It's graduation. It means you've stepped into a version of yourself that even your past can't recognize anymore. What used to haunt you no longer has legal access to your spirit. And that's not just freedom. That's evolution. So congratulations, chosen ones. The furnace is out. The door is open. And this time you won't ever have to walk back into that fire again. Number 1. The cycle ended because you outgrew the lesson, not because life suddenly decided to get easier. That's the part most people miss. Life isn't sentimental. It doesn't stop testing you out of pity. It stops because the test has already produced what it was supposed to. Every tear, every sleepless night, every betrayal and confusion, none of it was random. It was a curriculum written specifically for your soul. And you stayed in that classroom until you absorbed what you were meant to carry forward. The reason you won't face it again is because you've already proven you can handle it. To repeat it would be a waste of time. And time is too valuable for heaven to recycle unnecessary pain. When people say, "I'm glad that's over," they often miss that what actually ended wasn't the circumstance. It was their own attachment to the version of themselves that needed the trial. Growth is always the real key. You weren't delivered from hardship by chance. You were delivered through development. You became too wise to be trapped the same way, too discerning to be deceived in the same pattern, too stable to collapse under the same weight. What defeated you before doesn't even qualify as a worthy opponent anymore. There's a brutal honesty in this truth. If you hadn't learned what you learned, the cycle would still be open. Pain doesn't just fade on its own. It ends when you've extracted its teaching. The fact that it's closed now is evidence that you paid attention, even when it hurt. That's why the people around you who refuse to learn keep repeating the same chaos. They're still enrolled in a class you already graduated from. So when I say it's done, it's not just encouragement, it's finality. That storm had an expiration date and your growth triggered it. Life is not about escaping challenges. It's about transforming into someone who no longer requires the same kind of challenge to keep evolving. And you've done that. That's why you'll never go through that again. The teacher has nothing left to teach you there. You passed. You carry the wisdom, and now the universe must promote you because cycles only break for those who are finally bigger than what they survived. Number 2. Your pain was a curriculum, and you graduated. That statement alone carries a weight many overlook. Too often we think pain is a punishment, as though we must have done something wrong to deserve it. But the truth is far deeper. It was an education system designed in a language no textbook could ever teach you. Life enrolled you in a school without asking your permission. And every betrayal, every disappointment, every season of lack was a lecture. Some lessons came quietly through moments of loneliness. Others came like a loud teacher, slamming the desk with heartbreak or injustice, until you finally paid attention. And though it felt cruel at times, those lessons were molding you into someone unshakable. Think about how you used to respond to setbacks. The same things that used to break you don't even scratch you now. That's not coincidence. That's proof of graduation. The sleepless nights taught you endurance. The betrayals taught you discernment. The loss taught you gratitude. Even the times you felt silence taught you the power of observation. You didn't just survive. You were trained. And the training was so intentional that you can now see things other people miss, sense motives others can't detect, and carry wisdom beyond your years. The reason you won't have to go through it again is because you've completed that level. Pain is repetitive for those who resist its lessons. That's why some people stay trapped in the same toxic cycles year after year. They failed the test, so life resets it. But you didn't. You leaned in even when you didn't understand. You questioned, you reflected, you endured. That is the difference. You allowed pain to shape you instead of allowing it to destroy you. Graduation doesn't mean you'll never face challenges again. It means you'll never face that exact kind of challenge at that exact intensity, because you've already extracted everything from it. It served its purpose, and now it has no authority over your life. You walked away carrying a degree no institution on earth could issue. The degree of spiritual survival, emotional intelligence, and unshakable wisdom. And that certificate is recognized everywhere you go. You are proof that suffering was never wasted. It was tuition. You paid in tears and you graduated in strength. That is why it is finished. And that is why your life is now opening into a brand new chapter that demands the wisdom you fought so hard to earn. Number 3. The oppression ended the moment you stopped playing their game. That truth is sharper than many are ready to face, because it shifts the focus away from what others did to you and puts the spotlight on the role you unknowingly played in keeping their system alive. Oppressors, manipulators, and toxic people thrive on participation. They need you to react, to explain yourself, to defend, to shrink, to beg, to prove. Every time you engaged, even if it was out of frustration or desperation, you were feeding their illusion of power. The trap wasn't only in their cruelty. It was in your willingness to stay on the board they set up. What changed wasn't their tactics. They're still who they are, still full of the same arrogance and deceit. What changed was you refusing to be a piece in their game. When you stopped defending what didn't need defense. When you stopped chasing validation that was never going to come. When you stopped bleeding energy into their circus, the whole dynamic collapsed. Oppression requires two participants, the one who pushes and the one who bends. The moment you chose not to bend, the pushing became pointless. That's why it ended. The power of walking away mentally and spiritually is underestimated. You don't always need to shout, fight, or expose someone to win. Sometimes the quiet withdrawal of your energy is the biggest declaration of victory. That's why it felt like such a shift once you broke free. You didn't defeat them by beating them at their own rules. You defeated them by refusing to recognize their rules as valid at all. This is why it won't repeat. Once you know the mechanics of control, you can't be tricked the same way again. Once you realize that your silence, your indifference, and your refusal to entertain their games are stronger than any retaliation, you carry a shield no manipulator can pierce. Oppression feeds on attention. You took away the fuel, and without you, their system crumbled into irrelevance. That's the deeper reason the cycle is over. It didn't end because they stopped trying. It ended because you woke up to the truth. The only real power they had was the power you unknowingly gave them. And you don't give it anymore. Number 4, your spirit proved it could hold more than they planned to break. That is a truth so few recognize, because most people assume suffering is meant to crush them completely. But the reality is far more powerful. The universe, or whatever force was orchestrating your life, wasn't just testing endurance. It was testing expansion. Every pressure, every betrayal, every situation designed to fracture you instead revealed the elastic strength of your inner being. Where they expected a collapse, you held firm. Where they expected a crack, you stretched beyond the confines of their vision. You didn't just survive. You evolved. The people, circumstances, and challenges you faced weren't accidental. They were calculated to see if you could endure more than was imaginable. The cruelty, the chaos, the manipulation, they were all fire intended to reduce you to ashes. Yet, instead of burning out, your spirit grew brighter. That's what makes resilience different from survival. Survival is simply continuing to exist despite hardship. Resilience is bending without breaking. But what you did went even further. Under the exact pressures meant to destroy you, you expanded. Your capacity to love, to discern, to carry strength, to maintain integrity. Every part of you increased in volume and depth. You became a vessel that could hold more than was ever expected of a human being. They never intended for you to emerge this way. They planned for limitation, not expansion. For fear, not fearlessness. For defeat, not evolution. And yet evolution is exactly what happened. Your trials became the blueprint for strength. A map that others could follow but never replicate, because no one endured the exact same fire the way you did. That is your proof. That is your legacy. This is why the cycle is over. They only widened you. They aimed to reduce you, but they elevated you. They aimed to control your boundaries, but you extended them. And that is the distinction between a person who merely survives and a chosen one. The ability to transform pressure into power, pain into purpose, and trials into testimony. Your spirit didn't just withstand what was meant to break it. It grew far beyond the cage they imagined, becoming a living example of evolution under fire. Number 5, the season closed because you claimed ownership of your soul. That moment is more powerful than most people realize. For so long, life, circumstances, and people tried to dictate your value, your limits, your choices, and even your peace. Trauma whispered lies. Oppressors imposed rules. Fear drew invisible cages, and for a long time you might have felt like a passenger in your own life. But the turning point came when you finally said enough. You reclaimed authority over your own existence. That declaration wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't require anyone's approval. It was a quiet, firm recognition that your spirit answers to no one but you. Once that ownership was claimed, everything that once held power over you instantly lost its grip. The chains forged by fear, manipulation, or past wounds could no longer bind your decisions or cloud your perception. You began to see situations for what they truly were, instead of what they appeared to be through the lens of trauma. The people who thrived on controlling you, the circumstances that thrived on keeping you small, even your own internal doubts, none of them could dictate the trajectory of your life anymore. That is sovereignty in its purest form, the unshakable understanding that you are the ultimate authority over your thoughts, actions, and destiny. Because of that ownership, the season had to close. The universe, or the unseen forces shaping your path, recognized that your soul had reached a level of independence it could not unteach. Repetition was no longer necessary, because the lesson had been fully internalized. You cannot go back to the same traps, not because the traps disappeared, but because you are no longer the same person who could fall into them. Claiming your soul is the ultimate rebellion against cycles designed to keep you small. It transforms the battlefield from one of survival to one of mastery. That is why you won't have to face the same suffering again. It's done not because the world is suddenly kinder, but because you are stronger, wiser, and fully sovereign. Your spirit's authority now dictates what can enter and what must stay out. Anything else is powerless. That is the real closure. The closure that comes when you finally recognize that your life belongs to no one but you. Number 6. You'll never return because you're no longer the same person who entered. That is the most uncompromising truth about growth and transformation. Life repeats patterns, traps, and hardships only for those who fail to evolve from them. The moment you truly change deep in your core, the cycle has no choice but to end. You walked into that storm as one version of yourself, weighed down by fear, doubt, and vulnerability. You faced manipulation, loss, betrayal, and every kind of challenge meant to limit your potential. But you came out different. Every experience stretched you, tested you, and rewrote the script of who you are. The old version, the one that could be trapped, bent, or broken, simply no longer exists because you changed the environment that once held you captive, also loses its grip. What felt like a prison wasn't just the people or circumstances around you. It was the version of you that allowed yourself to be confined. Once you evolved beyond that, the cage had no walls strong enough to contain your growth. They designed their systems for the person you were, not the person you became. You entered the storm vulnerable and uncertain, and you emerged formidable, aware, and untouchable by the old forces that once controlled you. That transformation is permanent. It cannot be erased or reversed. Cycles repeat only when a person fails to recognize the lessons embedded in their pain. You've not only recognized the lessons, you've mastered them. You no longer think, feel, or respond the way you once did. Your perceptions have sharpened, your boundaries are stronger, and your understanding of life's mechanics has expanded. That's why you cannot go back. The old traps are irrelevant because they were designed for someone you no longer are. This is liberation on the deepest level. It's not just escaping a situation. It's evolving beyond it so completely that the circumstances themselves become powerless. Your story is no longer dictated by the chaos you once endured. The world around you may remain the same, but the version of you capable of being trapped by it has vanished. That is why you will never return. The storm may exist, but it no longer contains the person who survived it. You walked in one way and came out entirely unrecognizable, and that alone guarantees your freedom. Number 7. The attack stopped because you no longer bleed where you once did. That is the silent truth behind why some people seem untouchable after surviving intense challenges. Predators, whether people, circumstances, or toxic energies, don't attack randomly. They move toward weakness, searching for the spots where they can inflict pain and extract control. For a long time you were exposed, raw and vulnerable in ways they could exploit. That's why they circled relentlessly, probing for openings, waiting for the moment to strike. They thrived on the areas of you that still carried doubt, fear, or unresolved wounds. But something shifted. The places that once bled freely are now sealed, strengthened by the very trials that once threatened to break you. Every hurt, betrayal, and setback became a layer of reinforcement. You healed not in a way that hides scars, but in a way that transforms them into armor. And armor is not just protection. It's a signal. Predators can sense it. They recognize when a person is no longer feeding their manipulation, when their old tactics have lost effectiveness. Your energy now repels attacks because it carries nothing vulnerable for them to latch onto. Strength has no taste for them. The people or situations that once drew blood now find nothing to sustain their agenda. Where they expected fear, they find composure. Where they expected confusion, they find clarity. Where they expected a collapse, they find resolve. Your presence itself communicates that attempts to hurt or control you will fail, and that is why the cycle stops. The attacks cease not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. The finality of this truth is powerful. You are no longer the target you once were. The energy you emit tells predators to look elsewhere. Those who relied on your weaknesses as fuel are now starved. You've converted past pain into unshakable strength, and strength cannot be touched by those who thrive on weakness. That is why you will never go through the same assaults again. Your spirit has fortified the wounds, sealed the doors of vulnerability, and turned the very places that were once exposed into bastions of power. You bleed no longer, and that alone ends the cycle. Number 8, the worst already happened and you survived it. That's a truth most people overlook, because they continue to fear the unknown, as if life could somehow recreate the intensity of what you've already endured. But the reality is simple. The chapter designed to push you to the brink emotionally, mentally, spiritually has closed. Its sole objective was to test whether you could withstand annihilation. And you passed. You didn't just make it through. You endured, adapted, and emerged intact. That means the very same kind of devastation cannot touch you again because the furnace has already reached its peak, and you've proven you can endure the heat. Everything that tried to break you before was calibrated to your previous capacity. Every betrayal, every loss, every moment of despair was designed to see if you would crack, if you would succumb. You didn't. You absorbed what was meant to destroy you and transformed it into experience, wisdom, and strength. The fire that once seemed unbearable is now a measuring stick for your resilience. Nothing else will be able to reach that same level because you have already been tempered in the most extreme way possible. The significance of surviving your worst is that it rewires your perception of fear. The things that once paralyzed you now seem minor, almost trivial, because your internal benchmark has changed. You know what true pressure feels like. You know the sensation of being pushed beyond all limits, and because of that, ordinary trials no longer hold power over you. You've recalibrated. You've reset the scale. This is why the chapter is done, and why cycles won't repeat on the same magnitude. Life doesn't need to test you the same way twice when it has already confirmed your capacity. The universe doesn't check what has already been proven. You survived the worst, and survival at that extreme is permanent proof that you can face anything lesser without breaking. You are no longer in the same arena fighting the same intensity. That peak has passed and you emerged whole. Nothing left can match it, and that is why it is finished, because the fire already did its work and you walked out unscathed. Number 9, you were not delivered out of it, you were delivered through it. That distinction is everything, because too many people think freedom means avoiding the storm, dodging the pain, or being rescued from the chaos. But real liberation doesn't come from escape. It comes from transformation. You weren't airlifted, facing the fire, the betrayal, the loss, and the moments when every part of you screamed to give up. And yet you endured. You didn't just survive. You absorbed every lesson the storm had to teach, and in doing so you became unbreakable. Walking through the worst of life changes a person in ways that shortcuts never could. The hell you passed through didn't just test your limits, it revealed them, stretched them, and ultimately expanded them. Every challenge, every obstacle, every time you felt trapped was an opportunity for your spirit to strengthen in ways that comfort could never achieve. The freedom you experience now isn't superficial. It's foundational. It's not about leaving the pain behind. It's about carrying it forward in a form that no longer harms you, but empowers you. That is what it means to be delivered through something rather than out of it. This is also why what you endured cannot be repeated in the same way. You've walked through fire that others only fear from a distance. You've stared down forces designed to crush you, and you've come out intact. The world may try to challenge you again, But the storms that once held sway over you are powerless against the person who has already walked through hell and lived. Your spirit has been tempered, your character forged, and your strength is now permanent. Being delivered through the storm also gives you authority over your own story. You no longer need to fear what's coming or hope for someone else to intervene. You've carried yourself through every trial, proving that even the forces meant to destroy you cannot claim what is rightfully yours. That is why it is done. The passage has ended. The lesson has been learned. And the person who emerged is stronger, wiser, and untouchable. You were not simply saved. You were transformed. And transformation is forever. Number 10. Your soul has outgrown the environments that once harmed you. That's a truth that hits deeper than most people realize. The places, people, and situations that once caused pain or limited your growth were never meant to be permanent. They existed only to teach, to challenge, and to shape you into a stronger version of yourself. Now, after everything you've endured, your spirit has expanded beyond their capacity to contain you. You've grown so much that returning to those old spaces would feel suffocating, not because the spaces themselves changed, but because you've evolved past the energy they offered. Every toxic relationship, every hostile environment, every limiting circumstance was like a room built to fit the old version of you, a version that carried doubt, fear, or unresolved wounds. You fit into that space once, but now the walls are too tight, the air too thin. You carry new wisdom, higher energy, and a depth of understanding that doesn't align with the limitations of those environments. Going back would be like trying to fit an ocean into a teacup. The dynamics that once dominated your life cannot hold the person you have become. This is why the cycle cannot repeat. It isn't just that you're stronger. It's that your growth has made repetition impossible. You are now operating on a level that the old world cannot reach. The people who once had influence over you are powerless against the version of you who has learned, healed, and evolved. The toxic systems, the manipulative patterns, the small-minded agendas, they have no oxygen for your soul anymore. You thrive in spaces that match your growth, and those old spaces simply can't support the magnitude of who you've become. Outgrowing harmful environments also shifts your perception of what is worth your energy. You no longer tolerate manipulation, injustice, or negativity the way you once did. Your boundaries are non-negotiable because you've learned that your soul cannot survive in spaces that once confined it. That is why you will never return, why the pain cannot repeat, and why the cycle is closed. You have expanded beyond the world that once tried to contain you, and that expansion guarantees that your spirit now belongs only to spaces that honor your growth, strength, and value. Number 11. Your healing is their judgment. That is the quiet, undeniable truth that most people never see coming. For so long they thrived on your pain. Every manipulation, every betrayal, every attempt to control or diminish you was part of a strategy designed to keep you small, uncertain, and dependent. They built their influence around your suffering, counting on your wounds to maintain their power. But the moment you began to heal, everything changed. Your recovery became more than personal growth. It became a dismantling of their entire plan. Every tactic they relied on lost its grip. Every strategy became irrelevant, and every attempt to control you fell flat. Healing doesn't just restore you. It rewires the dynamics of power. Those who once profited from your struggle are forced to witness the exact thing they were trying to prevent, your rise. They must sit with the uncomfortable reality that the very person they intended to weaken is now stronger, clearer, and untouchable. The power they once had depended entirely on your vulnerability, and once that vulnerability is gone, so is their influence. Your peace, your strength, and your sovereignty are now living proof that their efforts were in vain. The irony is brutal. While they may have celebrated each setback or injury in your past, your healing is the ultimate verdict. It exposes the futility of their schemes without a single word of accusation. Your recovery itself speaks volumes. It declares that their power was never real except in the absence of your strength. Every step you take forward, every boundary you enforce, every moment of clarity you achieve is evidence that the control they imagined was only an illusion. This is why healing is revolutionary. It doesn't just affect you. It recalibrates the entire energy around you. You are no longer participating in their game, and their ability to manipulate or intimidate has been nullified. They are left with nothing but the judgment of their own actions. The recognition that their cruelty, deceit, and control were dismantled not by confrontation, not by revenge, but by your undeniable recovery. In that sense, your healing is both shield and sword. It protects you, and it delivers justice without a single word. Number 12. The silence after the storm is not emptiness. It's proof of victory. Most people mistake calm for nothingness, as if the absence of chaos means life has stopped moving, or that something is missing. But in reality, the quiet you feel now is the echo of every battle that has been fought and won. It's the sound of a battlefield where every weapon has dropped, where every attempt to harm, manipulate, or control has failed, and where the war has ended, not because the fight disappeared, but because you emerged victorious. That stillness isn't weakness. It's the mark of someone who walked through chaos and refused to be broken. During the storm, every challenge, every attack, every betrayal demanded your attention, energy, and spirit. You were tested relentlessly, pushed to extremes, and watched as people or circumstances tried to define the limits of your strength. But now the tests have ended, not because they were removed, but because you proved that you could withstand them all. The quiet that follows is a signal from life itself. The trials have done their work and you have done yours. There is no longer anything left that can dominate the person you've become. Victory doesn't always announce itself with fireworks or fanfare. Sometimes it is quiet, almost imperceptible, because it doesn't need validation. You don't need applause for surviving what others thought would destroy you. The stillness confirms it all. You are standing while the chaos that once surrounded you has dissipated. You are whole while the storms have run their course. Every wound that once bled freely has sealed. Every attack that sought to weaken you has failed. And every challenge that threatened to overwhelm you has been conquered. That is why the silence is not empty. It is loaded with evidence. It is proof that you survived what others feared you couldn't. That you grew where others would have broken. And that the war is over, because you refuse to lose. It's the calm that comes from triumph, the space that follows transformation, and the peace reserved for those who have faced everything and emerged intact. The battlefield is quiet now because the victory is complete, and you are the living proof. Number 13. Your future demands too much of you to let the past repeat. The truth is, the higher your calling, the less room there is for old patterns, recycled pain, or repetitive struggles. Every step forward now carries weight, significance, and purpose. The battles you've fought, the pain you've endured, and the wisdom you've gained were not meant to keep you stuck. They were meant to equip you. You no longer have permission to linger in cycles that were meant to teach, because doing so would squander the power, clarity, and momentum you've earned. Destiny doesn't allow reruns for those who are ready to rise. The past may still whisper, and old habits may try to tug at you, but your current path is higher, sharper, and more demanding than ever before. You've outgrown the timelines and scenarios that once consumed you. The energy, focus, and vision required for what's ahead cannot be diluted by battles you've already won. Your purpose now calls for forward motion, for expansion, and for commitment to a version of life that your former self could not have carried. The universe, fate, or whatever force is orchestrating your life has no interest in repeating the same lessons. Those lessons were completed, and now the stakes are bigger. This is why you can't go back even if the past seems familiar. It would undermine the very growth and preparation that brought you here. Your spirit, your mind, and your energy have escalated to a level that old conflicts cannot reach. You are too evolved, too aware, and too aligned with your calling to let old cycles dictate your present. The repetition that traps others cannot touch you because your focus has shifted from mere survival to mastery. The higher you go, the more exacting life becomes. Your future is not a continuation of what you've left behind. It is an entirely new arena that demands every ounce of strength, courage, and clarity you've earned. That is why the past cannot repeat. Destiny has moved you beyond it, and any attempt to return would be incompatible with the person you've become. Your future is calling, and it demands that you rise, evolve, and leave all old struggles exactly where they belong, behind you. Number 14. You carry evidence that the war was worth it. Every scar, every lesson, every hard-won insight is a permanent record of what you endured and what you overcame. These aren't just marks of survival. They are tools, instruments of strength and wisdom that no one can take from you. Pain, struggle, and betrayal were never random. They were a curriculum designed to equip you with abilities and awareness that ordinary life cannot teach. Your scars tell a story. Your intuition signals hard-earned discernment, and your judgment now comes from experience, rather than theory. You didn't just make it through. You gained what the struggle was meant to deliver. That is why it is done. The cycles, the attacks, the manipulations, and the tests cannot repeat on the same scale. Because you now possess the knowledge and tools, to navigate any similar situation with authority. You carry a permanent advantage that those who never face the same fire will never understand. Every wound healed has added a layer of strength. Every betrayal faced has sharpened your perception. Every loss endured has expanded your capacity to thrive. Your life now serves as proof that the war wasn't in vain, and the victory is visible in the wisdom, resilience, and power you carry forward. This evidence isn't theoretical. It's tangible in how you move, decide, and respond. It is a force field around you, a record of everything you've learned and mastered. It validates every tear, every sleepless night, and every moment when you question whether you could continue. The very fact that you are here, whole and unbroken, proves that the struggles were not only necessary, but transformative. Now the world can test you, challenge you, or attempt to pressure you, but the foundational tools you carry make you untouchable in ways they cannot anticipate. You have permanent proof that the war served its purpose, and that proof is embedded in your character, your instincts, and your strength. That is why the chapter is closed. The cycle is finished. You survived, you grew, and you now hold what the experience came to deliver. A version of yourself that is ready for anything, and for whom the past no longer has authority. The journey you've been through was never random, and the battles you faced were never meaningless. Every challenge, betrayal, and moment of pain was a deliberate part of a process designed to shape, refine, and elevate you. You didn't just survive, you transformed. You outgrew cycles that once held you, sealed wounds that once bled, and emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The storms were fierce, the tests relentless, but each one produced tools, insight, and strength that no one can take away. Now the chains of the past are broken. The toxic environments no longer have power over you, and the patterns that once threatened to trap you are powerless. You carry permanent evidence of victory, scars that tell a story, intuition that guides decisively, and discernment that protects against anything that could have previously harmed you. The universe has closed the chapter because you have completed it. You've proven that your spirit cannot be broken, your soul cannot be contained, and your destiny cannot be delayed. This is not just survival. This is evolution. This is mastery under fire. Your healing dismantled the strategies of those who tried to control you. Your strength repelled attacks that once seemed unstoppable. Your wisdom ensures that old cycles cannot repeat. Everything you endured has now become your foundation, your armor, and your testimony. You are no longer the person who walked into the storm. You are a chosen one, equipped with everything the experience was meant to deliver. The past has lost its authority, and your future demands nothing less than your highest self. Stand in that truth. Celebrate it, claim it, because what you've survived, what you've mastered, and what you now carry guarantees that the cycle is over, and you will never have to go through it again. Your life is proof. Your victory is permanent, and the world will recognize it whether they understand it or not. If this message resonated with you, don't just keep it to yourself. Let it spark transformation in others too. Hit that subscribe button and join the community of chosen ones who are rising, evolving, and claiming their power. Like this video if it speaks to your soul. Comment below with your thoughts or breakthroughs, and share it with someone who needs to hear that the storm is over and the cycle is broken. Your engagement helps spread this message of strength, healing, and unstoppable growth, because the truth you carry deserves to reach those who are ready to rise. God bless you.